I never expected that the Europe are living in the past while China is living in the future.
Hello and welcome to the Auto Ethnographer. I'm John Stech, your host on this journey. We travel the globe to bring you stories about culture and the global automotive industry. Fasten your seatbelt and let's get started. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Auto Ethnographer. I'm very excited to welcome back Grace Mou. This time, it's from a different perspective. She just completed a trip to Europe, her first ever, visiting France and Italy. And she's here today to talk about her impressions of Europe, how she compares it to China, and you may be surprised by some of the results. Grace, welcome back to the Auto Ethnographer.
Thank you for having me, John. Good to see you again.
I'm glad that you have gotten over your jet lag and you're back and ready to talk.
Yeah, I have a lot to share with the audience, and I have a very fresh mindset about the Europe, and I got a lot of things to talk.
It's exciting because when you travel to a new place and see something for the first time, that's exploration. You learn, you see. But what's interesting in this case is you've been working on European topics, on brands and fashion for a long time, but yet you've never gone and seen Europe firsthand. So it'll be really interesting, I think, to get your impressions, what you thought, and whether your impressions were accurate or whether things were unexpected for you.
Actually, when I before I just land on Europe, I just work with a lot of European and global brands like Ferrari and LVMH and a lot of European brands, and I got familiar with their brand stories and origins, province, or things like that. But after I landed on Europe, I get more insights about the philosophies behind those European brands, and especially the life philosophy that France embrace, philosophy of life, and different from China. For Chinese brand and the Chinese consumers, they always prioritize the functionality and the value for money, the price, or things like that. Different from Chinese and Europeans, sometimes they will prioritize the beauty, aesthetics, over functionality or value for money, things like that. That is a total difference from my mindset. I never realized as a Chinese before I landed on Europe that I always just looking for functionality. When I look at a product or brand, I look for what this brand is, whether this brand is useful for me. But when you go to Europe, they have a different mindset. They sometimes will just find the balance and the beauty in something and sacrificing their functionality or usefulness. That is a big learning for me. And for those luxury brands and the premier brands, when you look at them, after I came back, I look at them with a fresh eyes because I know whether they are so beautiful and they just put a provenance and the philosophy ahead of a functionality. They did sometimes something need not be appreciated for usefulness. They just there for appreciate because they are beautiful or something like that. So that's a big learning for me.
So, to be specific, we mentioned Europe so far, but you went to Italy, where you landed first. I think you said Milano, and
Yeah.
then you went to France. What impressions did Italy leave on you?
When I just stay in Milano for only 2 days, but I really love this city. This city is marvelous, especially in Milano. I just binge drink coffee. I in Shanghai I drink coffee just only 1 cups or 1 glass of coffee a day. But in Milano, I increased to 5 cups a day, and I still keep drinking all the time because coffee there is everywhere. And different from Shanghai, coffee in Milano is just like the air in your life. You breathe it. It's not like a lifestyle you deliberately choose while you are in Shanghai, because in Shanghai you can choose tea, you choose milk tea or something else or beverage. But in Milano, it is always coffee, the key players in your life. It's just like the air you breathe every moment. So that is a big impression. And I really appreciate the high quality and the culture there about the coffee. They treat coffee just like something respect, and they emerge this kind of drink in their every aspect of life. You can see that they respect the harmony and the tradition and the order in their coffee culture, different from Shanghai. Shanghai coffee culture is just like creative, chaotic culture. Things like that. They are unbundled from tradition heritage. There is no tradition, no heritage when it comes to innovation in Shanghai. So in Europe, the coffee culture is like a grandfather. And in Shanghai, coffee culture is like a teenager, full of energy and tradition. Different things, but also fascinating for both cities.
I agree. When I worked together with Fiat in Italy, coffee and getting a coffee was like artistry. You go and you have these artisans who prepare your drink for you. Did you drink all of these 5 coffees per day in the cafe where you had the full experience, or was this Asian style where you take out and you run away and enjoy it someplace else?
I drink coffee in a bakery across the street of where I lived, and I also just drink the coffee in the premier coffee shop in downtown, the luxury center of the Milano. I forgot that name. That is quite long, and I put it on my weekly post. And that is a fascinating experience when I just experience the coffee culture in that premier coffee shop. But that's a premier coffee shops. They bring you the sparkling water accompanied by coffee. So at the very first sight, I was shocked why they bring me just the alcohol, because I don't know whether it is a sparkling water inside. It's not alcohol, it's sparkling water. After he explained to me, so I just drink it. It is sparkling water. They try to clarify your tasting bud and give you a fresh taste before you drink coffee, so you can better just have a taste of the authentic coffee they served. So there are a lot of rituals and traditions when they serve you a cup of coffee. So a lot of thoughts behind, not like Shanghai when you just go to the coffee shop. They just infused with a seasonal taste, like the plum taste in the summer or chrysanthemums in autumn and winter. So they so abundant of traditions, a lot of innovations and ideas put in a cup of coffee. So different.
Oh, that's fascinating. It truly is an incredible coffee culture there. Of course, Italy is famous also for the food. How did you find the food culture? Before we started recording, we talked about the convenience of fast food versus Italian slow food. Did you enjoy the eating culture there and the Italian food?
Actually, I didn't have the chance to just have the slow food culture there in Milano, because the bakery across where I stay serves the most delicious focaccia in the world. So I used to get my lunch there and breakfast there if possible. And I love the fresh baked slice of fuchsia accompanied by a fresh brewed coffee. So that is the most fascinating thing I experienced in Milano. I do just try to go to the restaurant, but I didn't have time to do that because the bakeries across the street is a heaven, and I was trapped there.
Well, it sounds to me like you're preparing yourself for another trip so you can explore the other restaurants
Definitely,
next time.
definitely, you are absolutely
How
right.
about the customers? There's I live in Thailand, and there's a rhythm here how people go to get their matcha tea or their coffee, and you get it, you put it in a paper cup, plastic cup, you hang it in your little plastic bag carrier, and you run off to the office or to meet your friends. Um, but in Europe, it's a little bit different. I think people they sit, they relax, they talk. Did you find that when you were sitting in this cafe several times, the
Uh,
behavior of the customers?
Different. That's different. I want to just mention this. In Shanghai, the coffee culture is just like a lifestyle. People love to sit and savor their cafe in a coffee shop. But while in Milano, they get used to drinking their coffee very quickly, standing on the counter. It is just before they rush into something important in life, they just drink it very quickly in 5 seconds or maybe 10 seconds, then they just run away. Different from Shanghai, because they drink coffee like water or something, just brush my teeth or something like that. So that is an impression I got from Milano. Maybe different from France because I also visited France. France is slower to drink coffee than Italians, especially when it comes to breakfast or something like that. But they also share the same rituals. They love to stand to drink their coffee instead of sit down and find table and enjoy breakfast like Shanghainese do here.
Now, clearly, that made the coffee culture made a big impression on you. Does that mean that you are now seeking out Italian and French cafes in Shanghai?
Actually, when you are in Shanghai, you are hooked by those innovative ideas and innovations in Shanghai coffee shop. As I mentioned, I always hooked by the new flavors they put in the cup of coffee, which you cannot found in Milano or Paris because they respect their tradition too much. But for Chinese, anything can be recreated or reinvent, especially it comes to a beverage which is foreign to Chinese, like coffee.
Now, you spent a lot of time in bakeries. You drank a lot of coffee. Probably you still have some of the caffeine in in your system from a few weeks ago, based on the quantity. But let's talk a little bit about technology too, because when we spoke last time on the podcast, we talked about electric vehicles and how they were quite advanced. The Chinese electric vehicles were advanced on technology versus the imported ones. What was your impression about technology when you went to Europe? China is very technology oriented. How is Europe?
That is a big surprise. That is the biggest discovery in Europe when I just landed in Europe and France and Milano both. And actually, before I just went to Europe, I thought your Europe countries, especially France and Italy, are quite advanced. But when I just land there, I just find that I was transported to the past, the history about it. It was like in terms of technology, France and Italy were like are just like China 10 or 20 years ago in terms of technology advancement. Uh, Compared to European countries, China is a much, much advanced society in digitalization and the technology use. And for Chinese, they are getting used to the convenience brought by the technology. They might be feel much uncomfortable when they landed in Europe. They cannot use super apps like WeChat or Xiaohongshu or Red Note or some convenience brought by technology, the apps, the everything, mini programs or things like that. So that is a big finding. I never expected that the Europe are living in the past while China is living in the future. So that is the biggest surprise I got when I landed in Europe. And they are the two sides of one coin. I think that is good for the Europe because before they adopt the new technology, they pause and think and choose smartly what is the best for them. But for China, they don't have this mindset. People jump to the newest technology and embrace them without any thoughts. So
Mhm.
they are so impatient. They want to embrace the future. So I think Chinese, and especially Chinese, should learn something from Europe to choose smartly what is best for their life, because a lot of technology makes you anxious, and you are running just like because I'm a Chinese. When I just landed in Europe, I was so anxious about one thing, that is what happened if my battery is running out. So I always charge my mobile phones, which makes me so anxious. But while you look at the Europeans, they just are so comfortable without many batteries. They don't care about how much batteries on their mobile or something like that. So I think that is a good thing for Chinese to learn from their European counterparts.
Is there any example where, normally at home in Shanghai, you would reach for your phone and do something, and did you find yourself in a situation where you really missed this convenience, like payments, making a payment, or anything else?
In Shanghai, at home, it's okay because you can always charge your battery, and that's okay. But when you're outside of home, you need to charge your mobile phones all the time. I will feel anxious when the battery is 30% left or something like that. I will charge it immediately because you have to use the mobile phone to search for the apps and look at the apps and pay with your mobile. And when you go to the transportation, public transportations, you use the mobile phone to pay your fare or something like that. You cannot live without the mobile any moment when you're outside home in Shanghai. But in Europe, people are quite comfortable. They don't care about how much battery is left on their mobile. So that is a lifestyle I admire and envy, because they don't live on their smartphones. They can have more time to enjoy their life. So that is an attitude I quite appreciate.
No, that's a big difference. That's a big difference in mindset, and how
Yes,
you use this tool that you have. Very
yes,
very different approach to using this.
yes,
Um,
definitely.
Now, you are a branding strategist, marketing strategist, and you look at future trends. Um, I know this wasn't a business trip for you; it was really for pleasure. But what you did see, um, how did you perceive the brands that you've looked at to be different? Now that you saw them in their home environment, how did you rediscover those brands and then understand what they really mean?
I think for those brands, as I just said earlier and shared with you, I think they just put something more about their understanding of a slow life and the aesthetics, their art of life ahead of functionality. In China, people are so pragmatic. They always obsessed of the usefulness in terms of their education choice for their kids, to career choice, to everything they choose in their life. They only think about the usefulness. But for Europe, the brand or something don't need to be useful all the time. So when you are create a brand or build a brand, you need to think about differently how to make people happy or support someone emotionally rather only focus on functionality. And I think PopMart learned a lot from the emotional economy. I don't know whether they have learned from European philosophy or something like that, but they definitely know sometimes the useless sometimes is the best economy they got. So I think there is a big learning for Chinese brand and to learn from European brand. Sometimes you don't have to just think about the usefulness of functionality. How my brand you be useful in life? Maybe they should learn from European brands. Sometimes they should emphasize art is everything. Beauty is everything. Aesthetics it should be prioritized rather than functionality. So that is the thing that the Chinese brand can learn.
Was there any brand that you happened to see that you're familiar with in China that was different, that you perceived as being different in their home country, or are they quite consistent in their approach in China as well?
Actually, I didn't just spend much time shopping and looking around those commercial signs in Europe when especially in France and Paris. But I do spot a very interesting trend. I think European is much more advanced than Chinese, and China in this aspect is a circular economy. Are there are a lot of vintage shops, second-hand stores, and the people are fond of the used stuff. Is different from China. People just only jump to the newest technology. They jump to the newest things. They don't have the mindset of the to use the second-handed, to appreciate the second-handed fashion or something like that. But in Europe, they are just so advanced in this for environment concern or sustainability or just to save money or something like that. They are so advanced for those brands which are just thrive on sustainability or circular economy, uh, different from China.
Mhm. That certainly is different. So it sounds that there's a common theme that's running through the conversation, which is this appreciation of life, from the coffee culture to the use of technology or using less technology, perhaps in Europe, it's less intrusive into your life. and then
Yes.
fashion and products, appreciating them for their beauty, not necessarily appreciating them for their functionality. It's an interesting perspective that you bring.
Yeah, yeah. I do think that Europeans really appreciate their personal space and appreciate their personal time. They put the time and at the first place, they want to person interaction. They appreciate that the a face-to-face meeting rather than digitalization or online chatting or online games. So, and the one thing I must emphasize, I really admire they are. It is a highly sophisticated and civilized society. Unlike Chinese swipe the phones everywhere they go in metro, in public transportations, but they will just bring out the book and read quietly when they are in the metro sitting there. So I really admire that. And I wish more and more Chinese and can pick up the magazines or printed books to read in the metro instead of sweeping on their phones all the time. So I really appreciate that.
I have the same here in Thailand. My wife and I we refer to people on the street and in the metro as phone zombies. Because they walk very slowly on the sidewalk and their face is glued into the screen of their phone, and they don't notice that other people are trying to get around them and past them.
Yes, they are like zombies and like the ghost working in the streets. They don't care, especially in Shanghai. They even just put their eyes to the mobile phones while they are bicycling. You need to be really careful. They can rush into you immediately.
So, as we kind of get towards the end of the conversation about Europe, I have to ask, what were the, let's say, top three surprises? If you just list top three surprises, either good or bad, that you found in Europe.
The first thing I have to mention is that I never expected that Europeans, especially French people and Italians, never speak English. I never expected
Hmm.
that. Before I just jump on the Europe, I assume people speak English as I do while I travel outside of China, but they are so reluctant to speak English to you. So you have to
Oh,
make an effort to just have a conversation with them. And sometimes you have to use a Google Translate to have a conversation with them. So that is the first thing I was unexpected. The second thing is that in the architecture in Shanghai, you can see a lot of modern architectures, future forward thinking architectures in the downtown of Shanghai. But while in Europe, everywhere you go, you just see historic buildings. You cannot see the modern buildings or architectures in the downtown different from China. And the third thing is that I never seen a European use a power bank, the portable battery, like I do when well I just was in Europe. Just I was wondering why people don't use a power bank. So at the first side, because I'm the only one to use it and charge my mobile all the time. So afterwards, I understand that they don't need to because they don't worry about how much batteries left on their mobile phone. So I really appreciate.
that's great. Actually, I do know that when I leave the my home for the entire day, I tend to take a power bank with me also.
Mhm. Yes.
Now, also, we had a few weeks ago, we had a conversation about Pop Mart, and you mentioned it a few moments ago. Did you? find any labubus on the street in Europe.
Actually, I don't see any labubus on the street, but I do spot a pop mart in a very centered place in the downtown of Paris. I was surprised that they got a very good location in Paris for pop mart, a Chinese brand. And I do see a Xiaomi, the technology company in Paris and Milano as well. So surprise. And they also just found that maybe the technology product like Xiaomi is priced for money and very high technology and a price affordable technology. So I was surprised to just realize that.
That's fascinating that you discovered these. I really was curious if you found or discovered any Chinese brands while you were over there. Now that's over in Europe. I think my last question for you is, what did you bring back? And I don't mean physical goods, but what did you bring back from Europe that might influence how you do your work now with branding strategy? Is there anything that touched you that you brought back and will influence you?
Yes, the as I just said, the most important the most important enlightenment for me from this European trip is that for a brand, I learned you don't need to always prioritize functionality at the first place. It is not that important. Uh, well, just it's a big learning and enhance my knowledge, past knowledge and experience about the branding. Sometimes, and most of the times, how to invoke the emotion beyond functionality. That's more important to create a brand truly resonate with you and your lifestyle.
And do you think, from your capacity in forecasting culture trends, do you see that the Chinese culture might evolve in that direction to appreciate more the beauty than the functionality?
Yes, as I just said, Pop Mart use the emotional economy. This
Mhm.
to an extent they launched the Labubu and a lot of toys, the blind box to evoke the emotion and surprise and expectations. That would become a trend for the Chinese brands to follow. They will learn that usefulness sometimes is the best to create an emotional brand. So I think we can learn from Europe, and we can learn from their living art of living, so philosophy or things like that. How to elevate the aesthetics of a brand to a high level. And respect the heritage and the tradition, which most Chinese people do not share this insight.
Okay, no, that's certainly a different way of looking at products and at brands, and it'll be interesting to see how that influences your work and your writings as you go forward.
Actually, I have just published two weekly posts about my observations in Europe. One is about the culture, coffee culture in Milano, and which is compared to Shanghai's, and the other is how to find authentic French food in France, outside of Paris. If you are interested, you can just take a look and share your comments and thoughts. That would be appreciated.
I will make sure to drop the links for both of those into the podcast comments so the listeners can look down below and click and find your articles.
Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Is there any last parting word that you wanted to share before we close down the episode?
For Europe, I think I will just revisit many times afterwards. That is a fascinating place, and I just give me a lot of inspirations, and teach me a lot from different angles and perspectives. I will definitely visit Europe soon. I hope will next year or maybe 2027.
I love to hear your perspective on going to Europe for the first time. In the Western press, you hear a lot of impressions of people going to China, but you almost never hear the other direction. So this is, I think, really fascinating, and will be an eye opener for people who are listening in Europe or other parts of the Americas.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Grace, for joining again. It's great to hear your travel report.
Thank you for having me, John, as always.
Fantastic. With that, I'll wind down the episode. I want to thank the listeners for joining again this week. I hope you found this conversation as interesting as I did. Stay tuned for next week. We'll have another guest on. With that, keep on driving. Thank you for joining us on today's journey. Please remember to like and subscribe to the Auto Ethnographer and leave us a rating or comment. For more information, visit our website at auto-ethnographer.com. You can also follow on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.